Most of the time in my podcast, I talk about the influence of neocolonialism on Africa and how the institutions that have been set up by the colonial masters, such as the IMF, the World Bank, and other institutions of colonialism, how they impact Africa, how they never, you know, generally how Africa is treated and how Africa is maltreated by the rest of the world. However, I think it will be unfair in the analysis not to mention the fact that we Africans, by ourselves and by our actions, especially African leaders, that are destroying Africa. Let me give you an example of what I'm trying to say. There is this particular, one out of many examples. There is a particular president right now in Africa, a president of one of Africa's, countries. Now, this president, using him as an example, this person, this individual has lived, let's say, half of his life in America and Europe. He went to school in America, worked in America and worked in Europe, has lived there. He has seen all the systems, the transportation system, the metro system. He has seen all the development, innovations, the metro card, being able to travel around Europe and the subways, He has seen all the innovations that made America and Europe what it is today. So now, this individual now decided to come back to his home country and to his home state. That's the region where he was born, the city where he was born, and decided to contest for the governor of that city. And how elections go in Africa. Everything he did, he won that election. The usual African election. So he won the election and became the governor of that state, and ruled that state for 8 years. After ruling the state for 8 years, through proxies, he continued to rule the state for another 16 years. Now, altogether, he had been the ruler of that city, that state for about 20 something years. What am I saying? If you go to use the transport system in that city today, I guarantee you that the buses, if you enter those buses, they will tear your cloth. They will tear your cloth, no doubt, no joke. Your cloth will be torn, completely torn. The buses in that city are so rickety. There's no subway, no train station, no development, no electricity, the estates, that's the building design, no city code, no building code like you have in New York, you have in Chicago, you have in the rest of the world. There's no building code for the city. People are building indiscriminately. There is a lot of thugs, touts. The city is one of the maddest cities. So the question I'm asking is, if this individual, a black-skinned person who has gone out there, he has lived, he has seen development, he has been educated with the best minds, then he comes back to Africa and is unable to impact and improve and develop Africa. What are we now saying? How long are we going to keep blaming the colonial masters and blaming white supremacists and blaming Europeans and Caucasians for our problems? How long? And now that same individual has also contested the election in his own country and has become the president of his country. What do you think he's going to do? What does he have to offer? So these are the issues. Then I also mentioned that when it comes to slavery, we're having this conversation, this argument. And I mentioned to some people, yes, we blame the white people for slavery. We blame the Arabs for pre-transatlantic slavery. That's before the transatlantic slavery. Arabs were already taking slaves from Africa. But we don't really apportion blame to our fellow Africans. Because the truth of the matter is that most of the slaves were sold to the white people and to Arabs by their fellow black. Let's talk about Madam Tinubu. You talk about Madam Tinubu in Lagos. And there are so many of them all over Africa their main business were slave trading. Do you know, they sold their fellow Africans for things like whiskey, Irish whiskey, and for reflecting mirrors. They sold their fellow Africans for things as gunpowder and gun shells, and ding guns. They sold their fellow citizens for items that you could. So before we blame the Europeans, I think we should also turn the searchlight towards Africa, because truth be told, The damage that is happening to Africa now is not really being done by the Europeans. It's not really done by the colonial masters. It's mostly done by African leaders, by fellow Africans who have decided that they rather destroy Africa for their own selfish gain. Tell me why this man who has spent years studying abroad, seeing all the development that is abroad, seeing all the development that is in Europe and America and all over the world, now comes to his own country, his own state, and could not do anything. He could not develop the state. Instead, he turned the state to a rowdy, dirty, smelly, unequipped, no infrastructure, everywhere, touts and thugs. He turned the place to a den of thieves. Turned it to a den of thieves. You can't even make a move without thugs and touts and criminals coming after you. So, before we blame others for the war of Africa, I think we should also remember that we Africans are the cause of our problem. And for some of us who try to speak out about this thing, it's not like we are saying these things so that maybe some other Africans who hear our voice might be able to say, you know what, we can actually make a difference. We can start by lending our voices, and from there, maybe someday a group of leadership will arise from Africa that would actually make a change.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, and share.